Welcome
Good
to,
afternoon.
hi, Dr. Razinat. Welcome to Dialogue Against Rape. We are very happy to be hosting this event today from Red Eyes Development Initiative and Ebedi International Writers Residency. This is a collaboration that we are very excited about. The topic is not one that excites us, but we are excited that we're able to have this conversation, no matter how difficult it is. We are very happy to have in the room distinguished ladies and gentlemen, men and women, professionals, activists, advocates, and people who want to take a stand against the scourge of rape that is we find ourselves in our society in Nigeria today. My name is Ekaite George, and I am the host of this Dialogue Against Rape. We are happy to have our friends who have joined us on Zoom, and we're also happy to acknowledge our friends who are watching us live now on Facebook. Welcome to Dialogue Against Rape. I'll just go straight up now to introduce our eminent panelists who will be doing justice to the theme of our event today, which is recreating norms against rape culture and rape myths. First person I want to introduce is the very distinguished Dr. Razinat Mohammed. Dr. Razinat is an associate professor of feminist literary criticism, and she is also a writer, an award-winning writer, a feminist author of many books. Dr. Razinat is very passionate about the issue of ending violence against women in the society, and particularly now, the crisis that we find ourselves. I've talked to her. I think that we just can't wait to have to listen to you, Doctor. Welcome to Rape Dialogue today. The second person I want to introduce is Mr. Oyewale Oyegoke. I'm so sorry if I don't get the pronunciation of your name well.
No, you tried. Thank you so much.
Okay. Welcome. It's good to have you in the program today. He's a lawyer, a public lawyer. He's passionate about public good and change process management. I wanted to get this right. And one of the changes that he wants to see in our society is that we have a rape-free society. Thank you so much, Mr. Oyewale, for joining us today and for accepting to share some of the insights that you have on this issue with us. The next person I want to introduce this afternoon is a regular friend of the house, an eminent child's rights and women's rights activist, founder of Sea Hope Nigeria. The full title of Sea Hope is Center for Children's Health, Education, Orientation, and Protection. She works with women and girls and children in slum and disadvantaged communities. Ms. Betty Abba, thank you so much for coming on today to share with us the insights that you have and add your voice to this discourse on the scourge of rape in our society and where we should be heading to. Welcome. I want to introduce to us to Mr. Ken Henshaw. Mr. Ken, can we see you, please?
I'm right here.
Yes. It's always a pleasure to see your face. Mr. Ken is a human rights activist. He is the founder of We the People. He is a fierce advocate for gender equality and against violence against women. I'm aware that he carried out a groundbreaking survey sometime last year or the year before on sexual violence against girls. And I know that he will perhaps let us in on some of the findings that he made while carrying out that undercover research. And the reason why he's extremely, extremely passionate about the subject we are going to be discussing here today. Mr. Ken, thank you so much for coming on Dialogue Against Rape today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Now we want to introduce our consultant psychiatrist in the house, our very own Dr. Egbe Otu, who has worked with victims of trauma and led them to recovery for more than 10 years. Dr. Otu said that some of the things that he has learned about the effects of rape on the society in general, because sometimes we feel like it's only the victims that suffer this effect. The effects of rape on the society in general because of the damage it does to mental health of the individuals and therefore to the general society. He wants to share those with us and also so much more on this subject that we're going to be talking about today. Dr. Otu, we're happy to have you in the room, and we look forward to hearing some of the things that you have to tell us about the subject of today. Now, like I said before, I haven't missed anybody. Dr. Wale Okediran, is he back? Yes, he's back. Please allow me to introduce the founder of Ebedi International Writers Residency. Oh, so good to see you, sir. Dr. Wale Okediran called me up and said, Ekaite, this is terrible. We have to do something about it. And I said, Doc, what do we do? And he said, let's talk about it. We talked about it, and here we are today, about to engage in a discussion that is expected to make impact in the sense that it will direct people who are here and those who are listening to take action in the direction of change, positive change for society, become aware of areas where action needs to be taken, and also to continue to amplify the condemnation against rape in society today. We welcome you, Dr. Wale Okediran, and thank you so much for partnering with us, collaborating with us, for motivating us. Welcome to Rape Dialogue today.
Thank you.
So we'll just dive straight into our subject of discussion. Before then, we have a program, and the first thing on the program that we're going to do before we begin to talk with our panelists is to take a statement by Red Eyes Development Initiative and Ebedi International Writers Residency, which will be presented by a very distinguished Dr. Wale Okediran. We yield the floor to you, sir. Dr. Okediran, sir.
Yes, thank you, Ekaite. It's a pleasure to be here today. I want to thank you for agreeing to put this together because of what's happening. Can you hear me?
Yes, please, sir. Go
Can you
ahead.
hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I want to welcome all our panelists and to thank them for accepting to come on board at the last minute at very short notice. I want to thank them very much for this because all around us, we know that things are not too easy because of the pandemic that's affected so many economies, and particularly writers and people who work from. So for them to agree to come on gratis is a big sacrifice, and I want to thank them. I also want to let all our participants know that the issue of rape is something that I believe needs to be handled by so many people, from the parents to the guardian, to teachers, to community and religious leaders, as well as law enforcement agencies. All of us need to come on board. And I hope that by the end of this short interaction, we'll put something together and we can present to all these stakeholders so that they can use it to guide against this rampant and very malicious occurrence. Thank you, and I wish all of us a happy deliberation.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. What a way for us to begin. We'll share the statements from the residency to all participants and also on our social channels after this program. The full statement from Dr. Wale Okediran. We want to dive straight in now to our panel, which is going to discuss rape culture and rape myths. What are we to do to recreate norms? I know that we all have our different ideas about this subject. So I want us to start with Dr. Razinath. Dr. Razinath, rape culture has been defined by Wikipedia as a setting in which rape is pervasive and normalized due to societal attitudes about gender and sexuality. So rape is pervasive and normalized because of societal attitudes about gender equality, gender and sexuality. Talking about Nigeria, talking about the crisis that has come upon us now. I don't want to read out the stats now. I'm going to do so a few minutes into our discussion. What do you think about culture? Do you think it exists in Nigeria? Please, can you unmute yourself? We cannot hear you.
No.
Yes.
Can you hear?
Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for having me on this panel. Very, very important subject matter that has plagued our country in recent time to a level that, you know, has is deny the fact that we have always lived in society with rape. Rape has always been around, and in the past, people have always kept silent. Rape victims will not come out for fear, so many fears of what the society will think of the victim, and so on and so forth. And I must say that this silence has, over the years, helped to encourage rapists to continue perpetrating this evil on the less, I don't want to go into the variants of rape now, because both male and female can be victims of this heinous crime. But we have always lived with it. There is no denying that. And the fact that we have always kept silent. Only in this research, somebody was saying recently that it is because of the 5 months or 4 months lockdown that the country is now beginning to see rape as a big issue. That is because people are now idle, people are staying at home, and this new wave that, with this pandemic, certain changes in society must be evident, and we must learn to live with these changes and find ways to, solve above some of these criminal tendencies. But rape as a crime has always existed. So our societies that condone it, by if my son, for instance, were to have raped somebody, as a mother, I would not want my son to be pointed out as a rapist. And if my child, a daughter of mine, is raped, I will hide this fact because I'm thinking of her future. Stigmatization, one, and maybe whether she will get a husband in future or not. So these are the things all that our society has been riddled by, and we have always had rape cases. It is not a new a trend in our society. It has only now been brought to the surface. So the norms And the silence that we have always kept is something that we consciously now have to, design ways of changing.
Thank you so much. So you are saying that, if I heard you very well, that there really is a culture of silence, a normalization, so to say, of some of the things, the sexual violence that exists in our society. You also said that sometimes people, out of embarrassment for their family, tend to be inclined towards hiding perpetrators of rape or sexual violence because they are related
And victims. And victims.
and even victims because they are related
Yes.
to them.
Yeah.
So we can say from what you have said that yes, rape culture exists.
Exists.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Dr. Razinat. Let us move now to Ms. Betty Abba. Ms. Betty Abba, what do you think about rape culture? Do you think that the crisis that we have now is, like Dr. Razina said, a part of what has been going on, and some sort of normalization in our society has enabled it to grow bigger than what has even been in existence? Oh, I think her internet has broken off now. Okay, so we'll go to Mr. Oyewale Oyegoke. I can't see my screen. Okay. Mr. Oyewale, are you here with us, sir?
Yes.
Please give us your thoughts. Give us your thoughts on rape culture and the Nigerian society.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me here. I think, like Prof has just said, rape is not strange. I'm a Christian and I read it in Genesis 34 where it was first recorded in the scripture. So the rape culture we are talking about is some of the attitudes we put on that encourage or try to create excuses for those that are involved in such activities. And because of those excuses that has permitted into a kind of culture, norms, and beliefs, it has not really helped to fight the crime of rape in our society. It has been highly underreported. And the major cases that were even reported, the rapists have not been brought to books. So it has actually created a lot of societal challenges, even to the profession of law. And I think probably this is the time we need to face it and get it resolved. But by my investigation and findings, I've discovered over times like this, once in a while, there has been cries like this that these issues have been, subject of discussion, and yet we are still here. And not only here in Nigeria, but it's actually universal. As you know, we can say that our home culture is a bit patriarchal, that gives a kind of power to men. But even in Europe, where women are protected, rape is also a problem that their society is facing. And they even have a lot of more cases, even than our country, because of course they have good ways of capturing their data, while we don't capture most of those data. Just yesterday, three girls from my uncle were raped just yesterday, and they did not report this. They couldn't report it, but I got to know when I visited them, and the mother was just giving 10,000 naira. The police encouraged the rapists to give them three girls of the same mother. This was never reported anyway, but I'm telling you live and direct what happened yesterday. So we just have to know that this thing is happening regularly, and like a prof said, the situation we have in the country and the world exposes us more because the children are more at home. They are exposed to child abuse, relatives here and there around, and we can now see the animal in some of our people, and they are, manifesting, and that's why we hear one or two things. So I think what we need is not that we have inadequate laws. I've studied relevant laws, both the penal code, the criminal code, child rights act, the violence against persons provision act. We have enough laws to fight all this, but I think we don't have enough agencies of government, because the police cannot really do this thing as they had now.
Okay,
unless maybe we are able
just
to
hold it there, sir. Hold it there, sir. We are going to come to where we begin to make our prescriptions for solutions and the areas where we feel that we are all lacking.
Okay.
First, I've gotten from you, like you say, it is pervasive. Rape is pervasive. It is normalized, sort of, and it happens more than it is being reported. We'll go over now to Mr. Ken Henshaw. Mr. Ken Henshaw, tell us a thing or two about rape culture and the Nigerian setting.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity, of course. So let me start by saying that what we call rape culture is a sociological concept which basically describes the acceptance of the abuse of women, sexual abuse of women, as normal, acceptable, normalized practice. That's what constitutes the theory of a rape culture. But my argument in this conversation is that why I believe that the rape culture has emerged and exists globally and in Nigeria, we cannot fight that culture of rape without first understanding what drives that culture, what enables it, and what sustains it. And in my opinion, what sustains the culture of rape is the perception of women in the society. It's a simple question. Why is it only women that are raped? Look, I know that there's stories about men being raped by women, but that's negligible. I mean, the very definition of rape is women being sexually, abused. So how are women perceived that leads to them being objectified and used as items for sexual pleasure? First, women are perceived as somehow a weaker vessel, a vessel that's weaker, not with the exact quality of strength as men, as a weaker vessel. And I guess that this is one of the most devastating and far-reaching degrading perception of women. And so we see the display of this perception of women in workplaces where women are paid less because they have less strength, like the weaker sex. Yeah? And then we also see perception of women through the prisons of our culture, where a woman, for instance, until recently, is not to be educated. Her job is one destination alone, and that is marriage. At a certain age, a woman should be married off naturally. That is her natural disposition, to be in the house of a man, in quotes. And when that does happen, she becomes the property of the man. She breeds and takes care of the children. And the man is the so-called breadwinner and feeds her like you feed a dog. I'm sorry for saying that, but this is the truth, and we're being honest here. And in some cultures also, the perception of women is that they do not inherit property. They are not fit to own property. And in fact, even until recently in Western Europe, women were not allowed to vote. So these are the cultural perceptions of women. Religiously, and I'm sorry to say this, I'm a religious person, but we need to be frank about this. Religiously, the two major religions in the world, at least Christianity and Islam, place women at a great disadvantage religiously. In Christianity, which I am a part of, women are somehow perceived as somewhat subservient and inferior to men in religious practices. Legally, I don't know whether that still subsists, but until recently, women are not.
I think that you have covered plenty ground with rape culture, and we have noted the points you have made. In fact, I personally, I understand that what you're saying is down to the science, to the T of it. It's just there that perceptions, attitudes, cultural, religious, social, and economic attitudes of our society is what is fueling an emergence, as you would say, of rape culture. Mr. Kane, please hold your thoughts there. We'll come back to you very, very shortly. Let's just get Miss Betty Abba, who has been able to return now. Betty Abba, you have heard the discussion so far. It's getting a little hot in this room. Can you tell us what you think about rape culture and the Nigerian society, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Somehow I'm using this hotspot from my phone and somehow it's misbehaving today. I think this has been discussed exclusively or in an exhaustive way. So I wouldn't be adding much, but to say that there's a very strong rape culture in the country. Women have been sexualized. Women have been women's rights have been trampled upon, and then to a very large extent, like Ken pointed out, religion and also education has not really helped to liberate women from the pedestal, so to say, that the society has placed them as objects, as things to be objectified, to be sexualized, and I don't know. It's also sad when I hear people that are educated and that should know better when they talk about rape with regards to women, about sexual abuse. You will know that we have a very long way to go. I was in the hospital about 3-4 years ago, and I heard a young man say, how can prostitutes also be complaining that they are being raped? Is that not what they are all about? So why are they complaining? They've offered their body to everybody. So why are they complaining? So I just looked at him, and he actually spoke good English. So he looks like someone that has that actually went to school. And I said, why are you saying that? The fact that the person is a prostitute, does it mean, I mean, the person has offered herself to every Dick and Harry, that person has no rights, has no choices, has no dignity of person. How could you be saying that? I rebuked him and somehow he kept quiet. And so this is the mindset of so many people. We have a very deep rape culture. People are socialized to believe that these things are acceptable, that these things are normal. And then even the victims are not sensitized enough to reach out. And even when they reach out, why this thing has continued to be a major mess is that even when people reach out, the victims or survivors, when they reach out, the structures, the mechanisms are not really there to assist them. We have all kinds of law, VAP Act of 2015, Child Rights Act 2003, all kinds of laws, even an active act to protect people from vulnerable people, to prevent rape, and then to ensure that perpetrators are punished to serve as deterrents. But at the end of the day, most times people do not get justice because law enforcement is compromised. So if we're talking about rape culture, if we're talking about why these things continue to thrive, we should lay the blame at the doorstep of law enforcement.
Thank you.
I'm doing a critical comparison between child safeguard studies in the US, in the UK and Nigeria. And you discover that just like in UK, Nigeria has all kinds of law. Nigeria is signatory to all kinds of law protecting children.
All kinds of conventions.
But the difference is that these are not enforced. So when you have a police officer, that's a policing system that is set up not to fight for people that are victimized, not to ensure that the proper things are done as is done everywhere in the criminal justice system, but police stations are set up primarily in Nigeria, from my experience working with rape victims. Police stations are set up as business centers where the highest bidders get justice and get recruit. So if law enforcement is not effective, this rape culture will continue to thrive, and we will not see a situation where they are stunted. Because for a negative culture, for a negative norm to stop, there has to be an interventionist force. As long as the systems that are in place to forestall these things continue to encourage them, continue to reinforce them, then we're not really close to an answer yet.
Thank you.
So that's
Thank
just
you
my
so
own
much.
observation.
Yes,
especially working in
that's
this
like an introduction to us going in now. We'll be shortly trying to lay the blames, but more than just laying blame at the feet of those that are to be blamed, to try and fashion out a way forward for those who should take action. Maybe remind them, maybe they've been asleep, that they should wake up. It's time to wake up. Just to add a little bit to the discourse on rape culture, that everyone has said all that needs to be said, really. Just a little addition is that it is so deeply entrenched. It is so deeply entrenched, you won't believe it. It will seem like, oh, there are cultures like this. It happens in the communities back home, in our homes, in our churches. We mentioned religious places of worship and the rest. These cultures are so deeply entrenched because they have been passed on from generation to generation, these attitudes about women. And I'll just mention one. One of the things that inspired me when I was thinking about starting up this advocacy platform of Red Eye is that the Ibibio people, where I come from, they have a proverb which is a little bit X-rated, but I'll do my best to translate or to pass it on. And the proverb says that a woman's eyes shouldn't be red, only her vagina should be red. So the vagina alone is allowed to be red. She's not allowed to be aggressive. She's not allowed to be enraged. She's not allowed to be angry. If you can just let that sink in for 5 seconds. So when I started to think about this proverb, when I had some experience with violence and I had some responses from people, and it seemed like one of the last things that they want a woman who has experienced violence to do is speak up. You know, the proverb kind of says that it's fine. Things can happen to you as a woman, but you're not allowed to be angry. You're not allowed to be enraged about it. Neither are you allowed to be aggressive about it. You're just supposed to be docile and everything. In fact, shh, keep quiet, because, you know, people will know that you have been raped and the shame will be on you. So I thought, well, so why can't a woman's eyes be red? Why can't she be angry? Why can't she be assertive? Why can't she be aggressive if she likes anyway? I mean, we're not saying that people who don't want to be aggressive should be aggressive, but why is it that it is assigned to a particular gender to never allow themselves to behave in a certain way? So some of these things have been passed down from generations to generation, and they might seem innocuous at first glance. You know, you hear a proverb and you say, you start to laugh about it. But when you think deeply, these are just communication that has been passed on to deepen, you know, the vulnerability, the inequalities that make women and girls more vulnerable and susceptible to some of this violence that exists in our society today. So we'll move on now. Before I talk about misconceptions, yes, I'm going to call on you, Dr. Otu. I'm going to call on you. Before we talk about misconceptions, I want to just state some reports that were found in the news in recent times. On 15th June, Daily Trust newspaper reported that a 3-month-old child, girl child, was defiled in Nasarawa State. The mother said that she got up at night and she didn't find her 3-month-old baby. They started to go in search of the child, and they found her in an uncompleted building, having been brutalized by men, so much her intestines were leaking on her body. So let's stop there. Just about 3 days ago, the Inspector General of Police mentioned that in the past 5 months, they've received reports of 717 cases of rape in Nigeria. And if you do the maths, that's about like 5 reports a day. And if we also again do the maths, we know that the data that we normally have in situations like this are grossly underrepresentative of issues, grossly underrepresentative of the issues on ground. So that's what the data says about reported cases of rape. And then on 10th June, a man raped an 80-year-old woman. he raped an 18-year woman, as well as a child as young as 10 years. You know, he's been known to be a serial rapist. So somehow the community apprehended him, and this was reported. We have the cases lately, the cases of the young women who so tragically had their lives cut short. Some of them, we had Tina Ezekwe, we have Barakat Bello, we have Omozua Uwa from Benin, and so many other ones that have been littered. These things are enough to enrage anybody. Any right-thinking person should condemn this act and should condemn it in totality. But what we have noticed is that when you get into some social spaces, especially on social media, the conversations that are going on indicate that there are ideas that some people have about these incidences of rape that are far removed from what rape is. Those are the things that I refer to as rape myths. So somebody says, well, girls should mind how they say no to men because, you know, it makes men angry and they can attack them and want to rape them. What are we going to do about these kinds of beliefs, you know, that are not based on reality, but they have spread and gotten deep into society to the point that the voices that are spreading them are really loud voices that are able to even convince people who maybe didn't believe this to believe that this is the case. I'll give the floor to Dr. Egbe too now. And just speaking as somebody who has dealt with some of these cases, what do you think that we should do? Please unmute. Can we unmute him? Go ahead, sir.
I wanted to contribute to my own perspective on rape culture.
Please go ahead, sir.
I heard a lot of things from our eminent panelists today, which are true. But from my perspective as a mental health expert, there's something we can also do to reinforce the culture. I'm happy people talked about sociological perspectives and many other perspectives. But when we are reacting, just like the way Miss Betty reacted to that young man in the hospital who showed evidence of the rape culture, you could see that she reacted with emotions. And sometimes the way we react to this, even in social spaces, makes people misconstrue what feminism is about. Make people misconstrue what those who advocate against rape, what they actually intend to do. It makes it seem as it's a battle against the sexes or genders, so to speak. But this is something that affects all of us. And sometimes when the other people who are so affected by rape culture, who are, so to speak, on the other side, as though they are defending perpetrators of rape, it's not really that. It's because they are also reacting to this battle as though, oh, you're kind of saying that it's okay, so to speak, to dress anyhow. It's always the fault of the perpetrators. But we know that this affects all of us. For instance, I have a daughter, I have a sister, I have relatives who are women who can be affected by this, and it's a crime. So I'd like to highlight the fact that the advocacy against, the advocacy to reduce rape should be very well intentioned. Should be focused on the stakeholders. We've talked about law enforcement. For instance, how encouraging is our system for people to even report rape? So we start with the hotlines, for instance. Are there any helplines where people can just call and somebody would have to visit them even? And what of the law enforcement procedures? What of visiting hospital? The people who would attend to them in hospital, are they also perceptive of the psychological consequences of this? Are they mindful of the fact that they are also suffering psychologically? Or would they just tell them, okay, lie there, let me examine you, without observing their body language, how comfortable they are? So there are a lot of factors as to how we try to assist rape victims. And a lot has to change to encourage help-seeking behavior. A lot also has to change about how the advocacy is handled. So it will not look as though men and women are fighting themselves. The men are saying, oh, it's this way, and the women are the ones. But this affects all of us. It's against our concept of humanity to support a crime. Rape is a crime. For instance, if I have a right to use a good phone, is it okay for somebody to collect that phone on the road, and then someone will say, you shouldn't be using an expensive phone, or you shouldn't have brought it out to take a call? That's what happens when we sort of blame rape victims. But some people do it unconsciously because of the way it seems as if when women, for instance, are talking about rape, they put in so much emotion, so it's almost like an attack. Somebody brings up a perspective, they say, no. They don't attack that argument constructively. So the way the advocacy is going may have to change. Law enforcement, a lot has to change. And we have to be careful how we look at the religious aspect. Yes, religion is part of the culture, but when we look at it carefully, it's actually people's perception of certain religious tenets that really needs changing. For instance, a historical figure like Jesus Christ, when we look at it carefully, we know that he respected women. His resurrection, the first people to know of it were women. He witnessed, he preached to a Samaritan woman. He didn't feel her beneath him to preach to. So when we look at the holy books, for instance, because sometimes, since religion is a sensitive subject, victims need those resources to heal. And so we who are helping them must have the right view of religion. The fact that people in the guise of religion look at things differently does not mean that the holy books or the real historical figures supports this mistreatment of women. So these are my own thoughts about what could be failing rape culture.
Okay, thank you. So I was, some of those thoughts are debatable. I mean, all of us can debate this till tomorrow. But let's go back to rape myths, the misconceptions, the things that we call myths are the misconceptions. Some of them, I mentioned one where people feel that a person who dresses in a particular way has called attention to being raped. Miss Betty mentioned one where somebody says, like, if you're a sex worker, then you are in the territory of experiencing violent sex or violent sexual assault. Or people who feel that it is only women who are raped, men are not raped. That is why you will find, if we say, for instance, justice for Owa, you will hear them say, oh, men too. And I always say, you don't go to somebody's father's funeral to mourn your own father who died a while back. The fact that we are saying that we should get justice for a woman who has been raped, and by the way, the proportion of women who get raped is much far higher than that of men. But the fact that you are asking for justice for a woman does not mean that you are saying that men never get raped. Some of these misconceptions are deeply entrenched. Because you have spoken, Dr. Otu, I'll just move on to Mr. Ken now. What do we do with these misconceptions? What do we do with the negative norms that have sort of been amplified so much that it seems that the voices that are pushing for the things that cause rape are you know, bigger, louder than the voices that should eliminate rape by their practices and even by their pronouncements and even in the media?
Okay, so thank you again, but Ekaite. Now, the point I was trying to make initially is that rape is supported, sustained, and strengthened by a perception. And we can successfully criminalize rape and strengthen our judicial system in such a way that we can better prosecute rape offenders, send them to jail. But the perception, the thinking, the mind frame that gives rise to seeing a woman as an object of sexual pleasure, that thinking will remain, whether it comes to life or not. It's pretty much like the Black Lives Matter movement in the US. And I often say it, that there is a perception and a thinking which gives rights to racism. You cannot legislate on that. You cannot legislate racism away. You can only legislate away the manifestations of racism. There's a thinking that gives rise to that. And I'm telling you that this thinking has a religious basis, it has a legal basis, it has a cultural basis, it has a social basis. Okay? And we live in a society where young men are allowed from a very young age to freely express their sexuality. You know, that male masculinity, which also is expressed through their sexual prowess.
Aggression.
It may not, aggression is permissible within that framework. And even when rape is committed, right, the thinking is always, let's look for the woman and blame. Where the woman cannot be immediately blamed because perhaps the victim is a very young person. What they say immediately is look for the next easier person to blame, which is often the devil. Okay? It is the work of the devil. He did it, not me. So the man is not to be blamed. And we have grown this social thinking around men where men are perceived in the presence of women as uncontrollable he-goats whose libido controls them basically. It's shocking that in being a gentleman by definition, you are expected to behave with certain civilized norms, except when it comes to women. When it comes to women, you're actually allowed to, go careless, be arrogant, be oppressive and all that. We need to find strategies to speak to that thinking, that distorted, nasty, and childish thinking, which makes us see women as somewhat inferior. We need to attack the cultural frameworks that makes a woman seen as inferior. We need to attack the social frameworks, the legal frameworks, okay, the religious frameworks. When we attack them, perhaps we stand a chance of changing the thinking of people seeing women as objects of sexual pleasure. It is the same thinking, ladies and gentlemen, that makes it easy to marry off a girl at the age of 12. You simply cannot wait for her to start fulfilling the role of sexually satisfying someone, because that's considered her job. We need to change that thinking. When you change that thinking, you reduce the potential for rape. That thinking is not back.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, your intervention, Mr. Ken. And I must just say that I strongly align with you. We need to change it. Just like you said, perceptions can be difficult to change. But I will just say now, as someone who, as a researcher into violence against women and communication, that communication is one of the ways in which perceptions can change. Now, this can take a long period of time to evaluate and determine impacts. But research has shown that sustained advocacy and communication, especially from the media that we know now, has been able to set agenda and make impact on people. Especially from that angle, we can gradually, in a sustained way, amplify the voices of people who want the norms to be created in a way that will favor all gender in society. I must also say that sometimes when we get to this intersection where we are trying to be sensitive to whether men or women are going to feel attacked or not, we pay too attention to people and how they will feel about being attacked. I think that what is happening with rape now, I said to someone the other day, she said, look, the way feminism is viewed, I don't want to be called a feminist because of what some feminists do on social media. I said, hold your breath. The enemy is patriarchy, the enemy is rape. The institutions that have set up structures that are making it easy for rapists to continue to run amok, those are the institutions that need to be attacked. Now, some people will be moderate, some people will be extreme. Some people will be extreme to the left, some people will be extreme to the right in the fight to dismantling this structure but the target and the enemy are the structures. The structures that encourage the attitudes, the structures that encourage the perceptions, the structures that encourage the norms, you know, and we have said it here, if I might just amplify it from my position as a host, that this structure includes religion, it includes politics, it includes, you know, drivers of the economy, the people who control the economy that make it that the gender that is not able to assert themselves as much are women. There's science to back this, but we are not going to go into that. We all agree on this platform that structures are there that enables the culture, that enables rapists and is emboldening them. So the conversations to dismantle them sometimes might get a little bit heated, but that is not our issue. Our issue is that we have an enemy, and we find people who, terrorists, who even have an agenda, and they spend 20 years trying to achieve those agendas. So if our agenda is to make norms in society that sees everyone as equal member of society, norms that sees everyone as deserving of justice, then we can spend the next 100 years just harping on the fact that these structures that have made women and girls vulnerable to rape and violence in society must be dismantled, and we have to dismantle them, whether the conversations are easy to have or they are not easy to have. That's why we are in this room. If I might just move on now to Dr. Razina.
Can I make a statement?
Is she in the room? No, ma. Dr. Razina, is she in the room? I think her internet was bad for a while. Ms. Betty, I'll give you the floor, but let me go to Mr. Oyewale. We talked about the law. What can the law do to perpetrations of falsehood and myths about rape that is making rape sort of acceptable and condoned and tolerated, and some persons even in the justice system, you know, turn a blind eye to things they should open their eyes and watch? What is the law? How is the law enabling these things, and where do we need to strengthen them?
Thank you so much. I think I have to talk from the angle of sociological jurisprudence. When I listened to Mr. Ken Henshaw, I remember that one of the main functions that law should do in the society is to be a kind of a tool that manages the social engineering of society, harmonizing all interests together. So ideally what we should do is, when we have this kind of issues, our laws should be evolving to be taking care of the challenges that is, you know, also coming up in the society. Now, the challenge now is that we have a law, like for instance, our criminal law was enacted, and we have been using it. It was enacted in 1916. Like the definition of rape that was given by VAPA, it was just given by World Health Organization in 2002, because initially before, up to 2015, a man cannot be raped in Nigeria, because that has been our law. The criminal code and the penal code, they don't believe it. And even before 2015, it was also there that it's only when there is penetration that there is rape. So it was 2015 VAPA that tells us that it's not compulsory that it should be penetration of a vagina. There can be other parts of the body, and it's not necessary that it should be penis. So law should be evolving. So the question is, how many women do we have in the National Assembly? Because those are the agents of lawmaking in Nigeria. Now, these issues we are discussing concern women more, and they are the ones that can advocate for it more. So when we start with that, then we also come to the institutions that we have on ground. The people we have on ground, apart from the law that we said we have, which we can still manage, the agency we have on ground, are they enabled? Do they have trained hands to be able to prosecute the rapist, or to be able to enforce law against rape in Nigeria? We discovered that their level of training cannot handle it. And we also go to judiciary too. Now, the law is funny. When we have law and we have crime, the law we put in place, the ingredients of establishing that crime. So once you get to court and you can now establish those ingredients, then there's nothing the judge can do, even if it's a woman, because we want to believe that once a woman judge handle rape case, there's a way it also gets better, that you want to think that you get justice. But if the police cannot prove ingredients, yeah, what do you say, ma?
I say it's not necessarily so, but I'll allow you to just round off so that we'll move on to the next person.
Yes, thank you so much. So we need to work. The police, we're supposed to. I'm recommending that we have a special department in the police where rape cases, are handled, and the officers there are to be trained, especially on rape. And any officer that mess up, they should let us have a kind of feedback loop system where the complainants can have access to give a feedback to a particular regulatory body that will be regulating such special department.
Thank you so much. I think that those are very good recommendations. In fact, I'm aware that there are gender units and issues that handle, units that handle some of these things in the police while making findings. But as we all know, the issue is not whether these units are there. How are they working? Are they working? Are they serving justice? I think some of these things are also things that we should now be training our attention on, finding out how some of these units that have been set up are serving the interest of people who seek justice and not the interest of criminals. Thank you, Mr. Oyewole. Let's go to Ms. Betty Abba now before we go to Dr. Otu. Dr. Razinat has asked me to apologize. Her internet just developed some fault. She will be calling in to make her contributions in a few minutes. So I will ask you, Ms. Betty Abba, please, are you there? Sometimes I struggle to find people who are still connected on screen. Is Ms. Betty Abba still on?
Okay, yes. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you. Please, can you talk about these misconceptions and what you think, how far you think we can go with correcting some of them?
Sorry, I didn't hear you very well.
Can you talk about the myths that are flying around about rape and how far we can go in correcting these misconceptions?
Okay, I think first of all, I would just like to respond just briefly to Mr. Otu, who talked about my response to the man in the clinic who justified the raping of prostitutes. I would like to say that with respect to the rampant rape, with respect to the violation of the rights of our fellow humans, of what those people are, the fact that you think someone who is a prostitute is a misfit in the society does not necessarily mean that the rights of that person should be trampled upon. The person is first and foremost a human being. And that's why all over the world, the extrajudicial killing of criminals is condemned. Because you don't say this person has stolen without the person going through the due process, and the person is killed. And in any case, by violating the rights of the prostitute, because you don't believe the person should be a sex worker and all of that, does not, in correcting such a person, I don't think that, because we just have to put it the way it is. If we do not call out people who are reinforcing the rape culture, if we do not put our feet down as a society, this thing is not going to change. And when I also refer to religion, and Ken refer to religion, I'm a Christian. But that does not take away the fact that people have used religion, Christianity, the Holy Book, as an instrument of oppression. And we have to point those things out. We have to come to a tipping point in the society where we look ourselves in the face and say, this is wrong. If we must exist as a nation of right-thinking individuals that should be respected by the rest of the world, then we should do what is right, what is acceptable, what is human, what is humane. And so that is just my response. It doesn't matter if I like the person's lifestyle. Human rights is human rights, it's universal. and we just have to say it the way it is. So I wasn't really maybe antagonistic or combative to the person. I said, this is wrong. It's a wrong mindset. It is a person's choice. It's her lifestyle. And life is all about choices. And that's why we also talk about, and then I also had the issue of dressing. The fact that the person is not well dressed, it's not a justifiable reason for the person to be raped. Ekaite referred to the very pathetic story of a 3-month-old baby who was raped in Nasarawa State recently. How can you say that dressing is also part of it? So, and we just have to be blunt in addressing this issue, especially at this point in time in Nigeria. We don't have to be tactful, to be, I mean, apologetic. No, we just have to say it the way it is.
Okay.
So that is just my point.
You.
I think you talked about the meat.
Yeah, well, you've just mentioned that about dressing, where people say that people get attacked because of the way that they have dressed.
It can never be justified. My recent thought is that if you feel the person is not well dressed, maybe the skirt also is not is too high, why don't you even offer the person, I have an extra yard that can add to you? If you feel that you are so concerned that the person's private dressing is your business, I mean, you just look away and walk away. Or if you feel so compelled, then you can maybe offer to add extra yards to the person's dress. Then the space is actually not your business and it's never justifiable.
I think we all agree that that is
so you talk about
not real. It's not based on reality. It's just excuses that people make. Some persons perhaps now, because of ignorance, are saying that.
Okay, so because of our time, let me just go briefly to what you say about meat. I think it's just about ensuring that people get the right information. When people reinforce the rape culture, people that are educated, when children are raped, girls are raped, or even boys, and the parents try to cover up, it's because those people are themselves ignorant of the rights of the victim and of their own right to speak out. So the key is for us to have more on sensitization. People have to know their rights. I've been involved in several rape cases, and one of them stand out in my mind because it involved a 16-year-old girl who had been gang raped by 4 boys in a community in Ogun State. And when I got there, the police had, as usual, typically taken bribe from the parents of the boys and set them free. But before they set them free, they also beat up the father of the girl, because the girl was so raped, so gang raped, that she fell, she became unconscious. She was taken to the hospital. She was very sick. And then her father said, their father was brought to the police station, I think the next day, and they said, your daughter, what took you to the boy's house? This and that. And then they asked him to sign a statement guaranteeing the boy's freedom. And he said, but my daughter is still very sick and in the hospital. I don't even know if she will survive. Why would I write that the boy should be free? And then they beat him up and say, your daughter is very loose. And then you have the audacity to talk to us. They handcuffed him and beat him up in the police station. And that was at that point I went there. But then when I got to the village, I went to their house. And then the grandmother saw me and said, please don't intervene in our case. This is our
Oh, I think her internet. Okay, she's getting back on.
Case. We've forgiven the perpetrators. It's not why you concerned. And I just look at, and then she tried to rally, to mobilize a mob to beat us up in the community. That was sometime in April 2014.
Wow.
So now looking back, it's not her fault. This happens every day because people are not informed about their rights. And then when you try to help them, you become their enemy. We've encountered so many of these cases. So the key thing is enlightenment. People need to be informed, and then the system also has to be supportive of victims to encourage them, so that we can find justice, we can get deterrence, and then that people, especially young, vulnerable people, can be safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You have just raised the issue, and I'm going to take us to the last myth that I want us to highlight now. Some people believe that every woman, I'm using women victims now, that if a woman is raped, she will shout, she will cry, she will appear to be distressed. Otherwise, if she's not behaving in that particular pattern, then she maybe is lying about being raped. Dr. Otu, I want you to speak from the perspective of mental health. Is it every time a person is sexually violated, they feel like screaming or shouting or crying or going to tell somebody immediately about it? Or is it possible for somebody to be violated and they are quiet and they are even not telling anybody or even laughing about it?
Thank you very much for the opportunity again. I think I may have succeeded in getting your attention because I touched on issues that, you know, made people show how passionate they are about this. I'd like to start by saying that there is hope, because if we're successful at stopping female genital mutilation or female genital cutting, which was so entrenched in a lot of cultures in Africa, then we can succeed to changing this rape culture, to reducing these myths. Now, let me talk about that myth you've just raised. There are different ways people respond to stressful situations. In fact, some people have classified rape victims as those who were expressive and those who were not. The fact that somebody did not fight back, it doesn't in no way mean that the person gave consent, voluntary consent to that action. It was without her consent. And
like we say in street balance, loud it. Loud it, so the people who say, why didn't she say it since the other year, so that they can hear it from the back.
Ekaite, you must give me the floor if
Yes.
you would like to benefit from my expertise.
Yes.
Now, I've outlined some strategies here. I am a psychiatrist. I specialize in behavior, and we work very closely with sociologists to bring about change in attitude. Now, if I may have been misunderstood, the point I raised, it was really problems that I want to offer solutions to. If you would let me, I would like to just outline a few strategies that will help us in this fight, because it's possible, it's doable. You mentioned something very interesting, communication. And for communication to be effective, for instance, you want to correct someone who has done something wrong. You can choose to try to get across to the person, or you can say it based on how angry you are and activate defense mechanisms. And when you get the person defensive, you may not succeed. That is why I am advocating, I am suggesting to this house that please let the content be constructive. Try not to activate a lot of defenses. Let people know that this is a crime, this is wrong. When we are going about helping people to change what they think of these myths and to attempt to change culture, the content must be constructive. It must speak with facts and must also be open to the other side. You must hear the other side and now use argument, just like I suggested. You remember I said something about the fact that my phone was taken away from me. It's not wrong for me to buy an expensive phone and I have a right to use it anywhere. But the person who collected the phone is wrong. So arguments like that, like you brought forth today, can be brought up in a constructive manner. Women naturally, we think with our hearts and we get emotions involved, you know, but we must control ourselves if we want to bring about this change. We must be constructive in our criticism. And somebody asked on this platform, so there was a chat here, one Mr. Uzoma asked something about children talking to mothers. That's a fact. Girl child would likely confide in the mother. Though as a father, I should be open to listening to my child. So when you're targeting this education, it would be good to target the girl child, empower them to protect themselves. Like if you know that crime is rife in a certain area, while you're trying to control the crime, you also get people to be security conscious. So the girl child must be targeted in helping her to understand her sexuality, helping her to understand what do you do when this happens and how do you get help, convincing them that it's important to seek help. Mothers must also be targeted. Let us not cover it, even if it's a close relative, even if it's the father. Let's not cover this. The psychological health of our child is important. So you must get help. So in the targeting of communication, education, we must identify people we are targeting this to, and the content must be very constructive. I also think that a lot also has to change about how you go about getting the information. For instance, if you were to identify your stakeholders, police would be very much part of this. Whether we like it or not, the police is a very important barrier in this, the way they look at, rape cases. So when you're targeting your advocacy, you must include them in some educational program where the content you try to convince them that this is all for our good. We must, when a rape victim comes in, we cannot, talk to her in the counter. We must take her to a room. We must immediately call a social worker. We must give psychosocial support. And we should try to handle this as though it was my sister, my daughter. So by the time we target the stakeholders, we constructive education towards those who are vulnerable, we can succeed. Let us learn the lessons from how other aspects of our culture, like the killing of twins, for instance, how we succeeded in helping people to know that this is wrong. So I think the future is bright, but let us be constructive about our advocacy.
Thank you so much. What I have gained from your contribution is that we must be constructive in our preparation of communication materials in the advocacy against rape. That is your suggestion and contributions. And if I also get you well, you have mentioned that the psychological effects of rape on victims is immense. That is something everybody should be aware of. So nobody should try to minimize rape in society. Thank you so much. I think that what you noticed as maybe a provocation to my mind is a misunderstanding, perhaps in phrasing or in approaches to this issue. It's just a misunderstanding. I'm sure that in this room, everybody condemns rape in its totality. We understand that cultural prejudices and attitudes are encouraging it, and we must work to clear some of these perceptions that encourage it. I was trying to get Dr. Razinat on the line so she can make her contributions, and I put our speaker so we have our audio from here, but it doesn't seem to be working. As soon as I get her, we'll do that. So we're supposed to have an interaction, but before we, Dr. Razinat, are you on now? Okay, yes, please, can you talk to us? I think that we can. I hope that they can hear. Go ahead and make your contributions now on your way. What you think are the way forward for us to have norms that encourage gender equality and discourage violence against women and girls and other vulnerable members of our society. Please speak up.
Ways to, what did you say? Sorry.
Norms. How can we create norms now as against the existing ones that encourage inequalities? How can we create norms that encourage equality and discourage violence against vulnerable members of our society?
All right. Thank you very much. First and foremost, I missed, I was offline.
Yeah. Please, can you hear her? Can we hear her?
I wanted to make contributions.
Yes, you can hear her. Go ahead.
About the publication that a 2-month-old baby was raped and so on and so forth. Now, I missed the discussion from that point. So if you will just permit me, please, to make it.
I'll give you 5 minutes now.
Yes, please. Now, I understood what Ken Henshaw said about the perception of women being weaker than the male, and so on and so forth. But our society generally, whether it is from the South, Middle, West, or the North, we have this notion that if you are rich, then you are an important person in society. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So that the get rich quick syndrome that we are now bedeviled with is the reason that many people do go into occultic practices. Because when you tell me that somebody raped a 2-month-old or even a 2-year-old, 3-year-old child, it is not because the child has attracted him sexually. It is because perhaps some occultic practices that we condone within our society, and this drives the people who are weak-minded to perpetrate such heinous crime by sexually abusing and murdering underage children, and in fact infants. So it is because our societies will permit this. And secondly, hawking. You can find hawking in southern Nigeria, in western Nigeria, in northern Nigeria. When a child picks up a tray containing fruit, and then the mother says, make sure you sell all of this fruit before you come back. And if this child is not able to sell, maybe she will go to a mechanic who is a customer, and he will turn over the whole fruit, and then of course he has to be paid for through another way. And that is the way that children, female girls, for instance, who hawk on the street, get molested and raped. Let me come back to this, the question you just asked me.
Yes, what are the new norms that we need to keep talking about now?
Yeah. Yes, first and foremost, our laws, our judicial system is what we have to work on. Because as long as rape will continue to happen in our societies and nobody is brought to the book, nobody is punished, nobody is, in Islam, we say a life for a life. Life for life. If you kill somebody, the penalty is death. So we have to be stringent. Our laws have to be tightened. And I am glad that there are lawyers on this panel. So our problem, why this criminality has been going on in this country, is because our legal system is weak. Our legal system is weak, continues to condone sexual abuses, whether in the home or on the street or wherever, or in schools. So
okay.
First and foremost, I would suggest that our laws, and then we have to change this culture of silence.
Yes, and we must break the silence.
We must break the silence. Stigmatization, we have to look into it. A girl who is raped is the victim. God sake, we don't have to stigmatize that girl. That a young man will come, wants to marry the girl. They say, did you know that this girl was raped some time back? We have to break this kind of norm, because this is not our culture. Africans, we are people who take care of the next person, our neighbors. We are our neighbors' keepers. So if we do not change these ways of our behaviors, rape will continue in our society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Razinat. I mean, you have made so much efforts to just try and come back and be with us here. We may not be able to have you back, because I don't know what's happening with your connection. I hear it's stormy over there.
Yes, the sandstorm.
But we do thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. This is just the beginning of it. We all agree that we have to keep talking about it. It gets uncomfortable at some point, but it's okay to be uncomfortable to preserve the generations that are coming ahead of us. I mean, we have to stamp this out. There's no way we can allow this to go ahead. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Razinat. No, you don't have to be sorry. This is Nigeria. We know how we do. We know the things that work and the things that don't. So it's not your fault at all. Thank you for being with us. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, sir. So we've had Dr. Razina. That happens to be her closing remarks. We have come back to the house now. We are going to make our own propositions, our statements condemning rape, against rape, and also propositions to society in general, to ourselves in the room, to challenge us to actions towards the direction of ensuring that no matter how little the drop of water we put in the bucket, that we are consistently dropping water into the bucket that is going to fill, and we have a society that nobody at all condones attitudes, behaviors that can encourage rape, and then not to talk of condoning or tolerating rape at all in society. I don't know who spoke with us last. Okay, Mr. Oyewale, give us your call to action.
Yes, I want to encourage all of us and everybody
Can we hear him? Finehas, can we hear him?
I think his network is bad, please.
Okay.
to support and help.
Okay, it's back.
Victims of rape. I hope you can hear me there.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you like that. Please go ahead.
Please. So it is also important that we also speak.
It happened again. Okay, I'll mute him now and we move to, Betty Abba. Call to action, please. What do we do to create a new normal that does not normalize violence against women, and in this case, rape? Hello, Miss Betty Abba.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, please, just give us your...
Can you hear me?
Yes, please, give us your call to action before we can take a few...
Our women and children get child.
Miss Oyewale, you may have to just hold on a bit. Miss Betty Abba, please, hold the floor now. Give us... I'll get back to you, Mr. Oyewale. I'll get back to you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Okay. I think I already hinted on a call to action earlier. The need for enlightenment.
Enlightenment.
People are actually, yes, people are a product of the environment, and so the entire Nigeria is very, very deeply entrenched in rape culture, and gradually the mindset has to change. I agree with Diana equal on one of her comments on the chat. It doesn't have to take a lifetime for this perception to change. People are socialized in different acceptable form. This is the acceptable mindset, and the acceptable mindset all over the world is that you should not rape someone. Consent is vital, and then it's a no for minors. Whether you say the young person agrees and all of that, it's a no as long as the person is a minor. And so it's about changing mindset, consciously changing mindset. There were things I believed as a young person that I no longer believe. I've written a lot because I'm involved currently in menstrual hygiene management and the need for access to menstrual hygiene programs and all of that. The things I believed as a young person when I was growing up, I no longer believe in those things. In my family, the woman's bucket, nobody goes near it because it's dedicated to women and it's seen as a taboo object because of just because women menstruate. But then with time, this thing has changed even in my family. So people have to consciously change, and then we have to enlighten people. We have to speak out, and then we have to hold government accountable because government has the institutions, the law enforcement agents and all of that. They
okay, I can't hear her anymore.
Have the right to entrench the laws, to enforce laws. When we have all these laws, first of all, people have to sensitize people, hold our government and the relevant agencies accountable to do the right things. And then we have social media. We all have our platforms where we can expose these things, where we can enlighten, and then we can shame people who the enablers, the official enablers. And so I am so happy because there seems to be like a national consciousness with regards to rape. And if we keep this tempo on and we all continue to speak out against it and to ensure that victims get justice, that with time there will be deterrence, and then gradually we get to a point where we say, okay, maybe there is some sanity in this country.
Yes, thank you so much.
With regards to sexual violence, with regards to this very backward myth. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So you are advocating for enlightenment and a consciousness, sensitization of people to create a consciousness in society where rejection of rape becomes the norm. It becomes fashionable for people to reject anything that can create an environment of violence against women and girls and all other vulnerable members of society. I will take remarks from Mr. Ken, but let me just add that to if we have any reactions from any member of the audience, so that as he is responding to that reaction, he also gives us his own prescriptions, if I might say, a call to action. I noticed that some people raised their hands while this was going on. you want to react to any of the issues that have been raised. I noticed that some hands and comments. If you want to make any reactions to some of the issues that have been raised now, you can just show by raise of hand or mute and say so that Mr. Ken can respond to you and give us his own call to action. Who wanted to say something? Priscilla, do you want to say anything? I know that you were here before we started. And I kind of am looking for your messages now, but.
Hello, good day, everyone.
Hi, Priscilla.
Yeah, I know Dr. Tu says, yeah, we should focus, we should have a target. We should focus our discussion. Yeah, but I think it rubs me the wrong way, where the first suggestion usually is, let the woman speak. What is the woman doing about it? That is part of our problem. Rape affects everyone. So why do we think that the woman should be the one in charge of the solution? We shouldn't distance ourselves from the problem, whatever sex we are. As a man, I think you even stand a better chance of making more contribution to the debate. Because if as a man you stand up and say, all men, every man or boy in your influence, you let them know that rape is a no. That is taking the fight further than saying, yes, let the woman educate the girl child, teach her how to dress properly. You know, if you go on most argument sites, the focus is let the women, but let the women have been doing it and nothing has changed thus far.
And
this debate so this debate has to go beyond placing blame. Everyone has a call. Everyone has to be actively educating everyone in their sphere of influence. I think if we charity begins at home. Everyone you talk to should know your stance on rape. Because if you can change one person's mind around you, it can actually travel more than you focusing on, yes, let the woman talk to her daughter, let them dress well. The issue of rape is more than it's not a gender-based solution. We must all work together as men, women, boys, and girls to stop this fight. And like as others have said, the problem is silence. We have not been talking about the issue of rape. Many of us, out of 10, the statistics are there. Yeah. Every woman has been abused. Not every woman. Many women have been abused over the course of their lives, you know, but they have kept quiet. Many of us are guilty. But if we speak out, when something happens in one place, let us cry out. Like this Black Lives Matter. If they kept quiet, they won't be seeing changes. But I'm not seeing there are no calls for protest in Nigeria. We all hear these stories and we just shake our head. Hey, yeah, something happened to this girl child. Hey, yeah, and it ends there. Where we need to get the communities to protest. I have a friend who is actively working with FIDA in Calabar, and she took a 13-year-old girl to the police station and she was raped. And the police says, bring 5,000 naira before we even open a file. Bring 3,000 naira, let us buy fuel to go and arrest the suspect. And the mother of this child is a groundnut seller in the market. She can't even fund the investigation. So where will the justice come from? There's a lot we need to talk about.
There's definitely a lot. Thank you so much for your contributions. I don't think anybody here disagrees with you. There's definitely a lot to talk about. That is why we thought about having a platform like this. This dialogue must not stop here. We cannot exhaust the issues here. I mean, talking about, we are not laying blames, but we, like you said, many of us have had experiences with the police where we feel like going to the police is not where you are going to go and get justice. But I haven't talked about this publicly before, but as an undergraduate, once I went out with a neighbor, a very close family friend of ours, when I was in the university. And when we came back, he attempted to rape me. Luckily, I screamed and somebody came out. I mean, what if I had screamed and nobody came out? But I did scream and somebody came out. He had tore what I put on. And some of the people who lived in my compound then, some of the tenants that were guys, when they saw me getting back to the house, they were so enraged that they all came like a group of guys that they wanted to beat him up. And then eventually it almost became a cult war. I didn't realize that some of them belong to different cults. You know, then in Unical, it used to be that when two men are fighting, before you know, it's one cult group or the other. Eventually, I had to go to the police. But do you know what happened when I got to the police? The policeman started to oogle and started to make advances at me. I think I was in the second year in the university then. I dropped the clothes that he tore and all of those things and never returned. There's a lot about policing and our justice system that can make victims of rape either not want to report or stop reporting if they wanted to go ahead and report. But that's, you know, just about it in issue of putting blames today. Ken, did he just go off? I think he just went up. Finehas, did you notice? Oh, he just went off. Okay. So, Mr. Dr. Okediran, do you want to give your a call to action now before we do this?
He's back. He's back.
Okay, Mr. Ken is back.
Yes, he's back.
Okay. Okay.
He's back. You can take him, please.
Yes, he's admitted. He's being admitted now. Mr. Ken, we are glad to have you back, sir. I was just calling on you to talk to us about your call to action. And please do mention some of the findings that you made in your research on sexual violence against girls in Calabar a while back.
Thank you so much. Sorry, unfortunately, I lost power supply in my study.
We are Nigerians. We understand what you're going through, and thank you for the sacrifice you're making.
Yes. Yeah, that's okay. Absolutely okay. Well, thank you so much for a very exciting conversation. Let's not forget the theme of this conversation, right? We're discussing a culture of rape, and we're discussing myths surrounding rape. So what's a culture? The way and life of a people. How do you confront a culture that you consider bad? You confront that culture by creating what is called a counterculture, another culture, okay? So my solution will be framed around the concept of a counterculture. In this instance, what is a counterculture? It is a culture that speaks against every aspect of the culture that we wish to overthrow and to defeat, okay? So where we have a culture of victim shaming, okay, we must attack, and I use the word attack deliberately, we must attack those who shame the victims of rape, drag them out on social media, criminalize their actions, you know, reduce it, describe it as sinful, insensitive, and all that. In doing that, we are creating in the minds of people a new set of culture, a new way of reality. Another thing we need to do is that we need to look at all the proposed solutions, because there are solutions out there in some odd places around rape, okay? I went to the University of Calabar not too long ago, and while I was going through the gates, I was passing through the entry procedures with my car and all that, and a female student putting on a mini skirt and another one putting on a pair of tights, they were both sent back, and the university authorities described them as having been indecently dressed. And so I got into a conversation with the university authorities, and I wanted to know what the meaning of decency and indecency was. I wanted to know the exact inches of a skirt that makes it a mini skirt and therefore indecent. And I asked them if a man had worn a pair of shorts that was that short, if he would be considered indecently dressed. I raised those kind of questions. So you can see that the University of Calabar has got a solution to the culture of so-called provocation, but that solution further domesticates and objectifies women. It exacerbates the problem of the inferiority, the inferiority around women. That solution is a false solution. It's not a real solution, and we need to counter all those solutions at every single instance. Okay, wherever the narrative is being pushed that women are the weaker sex, our job is to always show that no, they are not any weaker sex. is to always fight. Our solution is to fight constantly and consistently for equality. And that's what I've been doing my entire life, ensuring that human beings are treated equally, whether they be male or female. When we see the next person, when the men folk see the women folk as equal in all respect, irrespective of what any institution, legal, religious, cultural, and so on says, when people begin to have that perception, the drive to see women as objects that can be dominated for pleasure will certainly be defeated. And then, Ekaite, you asked me to talk a little bit about the research I did in Calabar. In 2019, I recruited a team of researchers to go on the ground and study the problem of child prostitution in Cross River State. I know we are almost out of time, but I'll just tell you this in summary.
Yeah, you can do it in 2 minutes, yeah.
Excuse me?
I mean, you can do it in 2 minutes. Go ahead. I found it interesting. That's why I want you to highlight it.
Yes, it's a very interesting, we made some very interesting, sour and gory findings around child prostitution. We went to about 7 or 8 different locations in Calabar where girls, some as young as 9 years old, are being prostituted for a fee. And we discovered that Calabar had not just become the tourism capital of Nigeria, but had also become the capital of pedophilia in Nigeria. So there's sex tourism going on, pedophilia tourism, where people who want to sleep with girls, some as young as 9, 10, 15, can easily go to Calabar and you'll get a girl to sleep with. We had video recordings of girls as young as 12, stripping naked for men. And our findings are contained in a report called Paradise for Pedophiles. If you enter this word online, Paradise for Pedophiles, you will find the full extent of our report. And you are welcome to ask any question related to this, and I'll share it totally. Once again, Ekaite, thank you for this opportunity.
Ken, I can't thank you enough, and all of our panelists, Dr. Egbeotu, Dr. Razinat, who has been offline, Miss Betty Abba, I think her own internet is also problematic and she's gone off. Mr. Oyewale Oyegoke. Mr. Oyewale, are you still on? Oh, I'm glad. Yes, he's still on. You have made presentations that I think that are provoking. They are thought-provoking. We can now go back and begin to think about some of the things that we've listened today. I saw messages on the chat. Let me just give attention to 1 or 2. I saw a message from Uzoma Kelechi who asked, what about spousal rape or something like that? Well, let me just respond to this quickly. I personally get a little offended when people try to qualify rape by calling it all those fancy names. Rape is rape. If you rape your spouse, you have raped her. It doesn't by any means get better or worse just because we have qualified it with spousal. So if you take rape without consent, you threaten or you lure somebody into sex when they do not properly consent to it, and now we are saying that no is no, consent should be given. It's not maybe, because she said maybe, I wasn't sure. She was looking, the way she was smiling at me, it seemed like she liked me a little bit and I just wanted to go. I think that we should move past the places where we try to qualify actions that bring up about sexual violence. I'm just trying to look at the comments again. Priscilla said, if I were a victim in that community, I would not. Community many a times deals with rape in their own terms. The rapist must cleanse the land for defiling it rather than reporting to the appropriate channel. If I were a victim in that community, I would not accept that justice has been served if all the perpetrator does is to cleanse the land. Again, it goes back to what we've been saying. Norms, cultural attitudes and laws. You know, slap on the wrist to rapists. It just makes them get worse and emboldened. Dr. Tu, please give your call to action, like your closing remarks now, before I say the final, give a final message from Red Eye and Ebedi International Writers Residency, and we shut down this program for today.
Well, thank you very much. I think I've learned a lot I think I've learned a lot from today. You can begin to see how much rape culture affects all of us. And there's this instrument we use when we are trying to study how much people accept rape myths, the rape myth acceptance scale. I'm sure if I had administered it on myself, it's possible I may score highly. But I've learned a lot of things. One is that we, the male gender, must actively be involved in this conversation. And I'm happy, I mean, quite a lot of the panel are males. And all of us are rape advocates against this very heinous crime called rape. I've also learned something very interesting, that we should shame the enablers. So like Ken mentioned, we must have this counterculture where if you in any way seem to be supporting this rape culture, you should be ashamed, not the victim. So these are some important things that we can continue to talk about. But we will agree that there's a lot to talk about. Before I get on to how I divided these strategies, I would like all of us to believe that the future is bright. We can achieve this. Let's not be discouraged by the extent, the pervasive nature of the rape culture. We can succeed. I've divided the strategies into three major areas for call to action. One, targeted at the perpetrators. Two, the system. And three, the victims. The victims concern me a lot because if something happens, we also have to deal with the aftermath, the consequences of what has happened. Now, with regards to the perpetrators, let's not, we've all agreed that majority of victims are males, or is that not something we've agreed? Majority of perpetrators, rather, sorry. Oh, okay. Majority of perpetrators are males. That we've agreed on, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, that means that all of us should take very seriously the sexuality education of the male child also. So that should not be left only to the mother, the father. Now, this would involve sociologists and those in the sector of education. The content with regards to sexuality education, I'm not saying differences for the male and the girl child, but let's focus on proper sexuality education. Most of what young men learn about sexuality, about intercourse, about relationship between a man and a woman are from the informal settings, from the streets, from criminals, and from pornography. So, but if there is proper sexuality education, people would understand that even if I get married to a woman, that her body, she's not there to sexually gratify me. The relationship is more important than sexual intercourse. Even if I'm having a relationship with a young woman, I'm dating her, it's not just about the sex. The relationship, the friendship is even more important. So if that content is properly done, we would have more
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Dr. Otu? Hello, Finehas, can you hear me, please?
I can hear you.
Okay, you can.
But Dr. Otu is like he's cracking.
Yes, I think that's
bad.
I think that we have heard some of the points he has raised, the three strategies, and we'll do well to go back and re-strategize. On the platform of Dialogue Against, Dr. Otu, thank you so much. It was the internet. It was the internet that, yeah, thank you.
Sorry, can I just complete my comment? I'm almost through.
You gave us, okay, please give us so that we can round off here. Thank you.
Now, let me just talk about system. We've already talked about that, the police and all of that, but there's an important aspect of system we must also include, the family.
Yeah.
Rape is even more dangerous when a child is involved.
Yes.
I mean, if the child survives, the child is still developing psychologically, and it can derail the proper psychological development. So, family system must be strengthened to protect children. And when children cannot be protected, our social welfare system should rise up to the task to protect children. Ken has mentioned about child prostitution in Calabar. That's probably because of the failures of the family system. So we should also think of, I've mentioned strategies directed at the perpetrators. I've mentioned strategies directed at the system. And finally, I'd like to talk about strategies to assist the victim. So we must arm the more likely victims with what it takes to protect themselves. If it happens, you must seek help.
Okay.
And the psychological sequel, unfortunately, I've not had enough time to talk about the psychological.
Yeah, so sorry. I have 4 minutes left, sir.
Okay, let me just mention this. Okay. That with regards to the psychological sequel, I have a lot of panelists here working with rape victims.
Okay.
We can do a training.
It doesn't have to.
We can do training to help people understand the psychological sequelae of rape victims so they can be better empowered to assist them. While we're trying to get justice, we also need to get to assist them to recover properly from this crime.
To recover. Thank you so much. I think that, like, when I started this, I thought that we were going to be able to, like, now I feel we should have this conversation again tomorrow, but internet will let us have it every day. I'm very sure that this conversation will be ongoing. We have all agreed, I mean, the panelists have said that it should be sustained. Communication to end rape should be sustained. And from our own end here at Red Eye, we are ready to sustain the conversations against rape. We are ready to create a counterculture, to communicate a counterculture, to send out messages, to create awareness of the existence of a counterculture that is even more exciting for men and women, and will protect men and women from the scourge of rape. I just want to bring some tips here from a UN Women organization on how to counter rape culture. One of it is create a culture of enthusiastic consent, speak out, redefine masculinity, stop victim blaming, have zero tolerance for rape, broaden your understanding of rape, take an intersectional approach. So it's not a women thing or a men thing or a rape victims thing or a survivors thing. Also know the history of the culture. Mr. Ken, Mr. Oyewale, Dr. Razinat, Ms. Betty Abba, they've enlightened us, and Dr. Otu, they've enlightened us on how deeply entrenched some of these attitudes and the norms that we have now are. And then invest in women. Please, I just want to say this to everyone listening. I'm proud of the people who are in the room that I am now, the men and women who are in this room. Invest in the women in your lives. Give them good education, give them opportunities to empower themselves, so much so that nobody around you can look at them as someone who is vulnerable enough for them to even begin to try to do some of the nasty things that we are hearing people do to women and girls. We have to invest in girls. And if someone comes to you, I've had people come to me. In fact, I was supposed to have a survivor of rape on this program today, but at the last minute, she lost the courage to come on and talk to us about her experience. And you can't blame her. I mean, I'm just having chills even thinking about it. You can't even blame her. It is not an easy experience to talk about privately and openly, for that matter. So we should listen to survivors. They need all the listening ears that they can get. We should not make any jokes. We should not laugh at any rape jokes. And we should all be involved in creating a counterculture against rape culture in our country, in dismantling structures that encourage inequalities, in breaking down the myths, in communicating in a sustained way and in a loud way, so much so that our voices will overwhelm the voices that say, oh, well, you guys are talking too much about rape as if it's the only thing to be talked about. No, we have to speak out against sexual and gender-based violence. Thank you so much to Ebedi International Writers Residency for encouraging us, for partnering with us, for motivating us. At Red Eye, we do a lot of advocacy. We do a lot of information dissemination. We do a lot to create awareness. If you have any conversations that you find it difficult to have in another space, this is a space for you to come in and have these conversations with us. My name is Ekaite George. I am the host of this event, Recreating Norms against rape culture and rape myths. And I have had a fantastic time with all of the guests in the house today. Anyone wants to give a 1 minute vote of thanks? Dr. Kediron or Finehas, who else? Dr. Kediron, please, can you say something? Ebedi Residency is 10 years old in Nigeria this year. It has been creating seasoned writers who have gone on to become award-winning writers in Nigeria, the first ever writers residency in Nigeria, and that is taking residents from all over Africa and other parts of the world. Dr. Kediron, please, do you want to give us a closing remark?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you very well. Go ahead, we can hear you well.
Can you hear me? I can't hear. I'm not sure that.
Okay, well, so his audio is faulty there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for being at this.
I've lost audio, please.
Dr. Kediron. Dr. Kediron. Oh. Okay, something is wrong with his audio. Thank you to Miss Betty Abba. Thank you to Mr. Ken Henshaw. Thank you to Dr. Egbeotu, our doctor in the house.
Hello?
Dr. Kediron, can you hear me now, sir? He can't hear. Thank you to Miss Ikwodian Abasi, who has been in the room. Oh, I just saw your message now, Ikwa. If the violator doesn't or didn't beat the victim before or during penetration, then the act wasn't rape. That's another non-story. I mean, another myth about rape that we all know is not true. Thank you so much for your contributions in the chats and being in the room with us. Mr. Finaya Sudoyu is from Radio Nigeria, has been doing a lot for Red Eye, trying to send these messages that we give here out to Nigerians in general. Mr. Oyewale Twalesa, thank you so much. Chukwudi Ofurum, who is our tech expert here, Miss Success Victor, who is also working with me here. I have a team who work day and night to ensure that we have these conversations, and nothing could have happened here without their contributions. I want to say thank you to them. Miss Paul,
thank you,
Paul, thank you for being here. Thank you, guys, and please let's come back into this room and talk about how we can condemn the act of rape in Nigeria even more than we have condemned today. We say no to rape, we say no to sexual and gender-based violence, and we say it must stop, victims must have justice, and we must have a society where people who are raping people are afraid to